We're live and set to begin.
Great. Good afternoon. As chair of the commission, I call this meeting of the Michigan Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission to order at 12:31 p.m. This Zoom webinar is being live streamed to YouTube. For anyone in the public watching who would prefer to watch via a different platform than they are currently using, please visit our social media at Redistricting Michigan to find the link for either viewing on YouTube. Our live stream today includes closed captioning as well. We have ASL interpretation available for this meeting. If you are a member of the public watching who would like easier viewing options for the ASL interpreter on your screen, please do email us at redistricting@michigan.gov, and we will provide you with additional viewing options. Similarly, members of the public who would like to access translation services during the webinar can email us at redistricting@michigan.gov for details on how to access language transition services available for this meeting. Closed caption and ASL, Spanish and Arabic translation services will be provided for effective participation in this meeting. People with disabilities needing other specific accommodations should email reinhardts@michigan.gov. This meeting is being recorded and will be available at redistrictingmichigan.org for viewing at a later date. This meeting is also being transcribed, and those transcriptions will be made available and posted on redistrictingmichigan.org along with written public comment submissions. Members of the media who may have questions before, during, or after the meeting should direct those questions to Edward Woods III, Communications and Outreach Director for the Commission at woodse3@michigan.gov. Members of the media should have this contact information. Let's move on to our roll call. I will turn our attention to Ms. Sally Marsh for the purposes of the public watching and public record. Department of State staff Sally Marsh will note the commissioners present.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good afternoon, everyone. I will call your name, and when I call your name, please unmute yourself, indicate that you are present and where you are remotely attending the meeting from. Doug Clark.
I'm present and I'm remotely attending the meeting from Rochester Hills, Michigan.
Juanita Curry.
Present and I'm remotely attending the meeting from Detroit, Michigan.
Anthony Eade.
Present, remotely attending from Detroit, Michigan.
Brittany Kellum.
Present and remotely attending from Detroit, Michigan.
Rhonda Lang.
Present, attending remotely from Reed City, Michigan.
Steve Lett.
Present and attending from Lee County, Florida.
Cynthia Orton. MC Rothhorn.
Present, attending from Lansing, Michigan.
Rebecca Zatella.
Present, attending remotely from Wayne County, Michigan.
Janice Villette.
Present, attending remotely from Highland, Michigan.
Aaron Wagner.
Present, attending remotely from Charlotte, Michigan.
Richard Weiss.
Present, attending remotely from Saginaw, Michigan.
Dustin Witches.
Present, and I'm attending from Howell, Michigan.
There are 12 of 13 commissioners present, and there is a quorum.
Thank you, Sally. Let's move on to the adoption of the agenda. As a reminder to the public watching, you can see the agenda at redistrictingmichigan.org. And taking a moment to review the agenda, are there any amendments or discussion regarding the agenda? MC shaking his head. He says no.
I would move to approve.
Okay, hearing none, I would now entertain a motion to approve the meeting agenda. I have a motion made by MC Rothhorn And I have a second made by Commissioner Douglas Clark. All in favor of the agenda? Is we move in second, excuse me, that the agenda be approved, adopted, excuse me, I couldn't get the word out, adopted as presented. All in favor, raise your hand, and all opposed, same sign. By my count, the ayes prevail, and the agenda has been adopted. So let's look at the review and approval of minutes. Same thing. Are there any changes or thoughts on the minutes? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes from last week's meeting, which are also posted on redistrictingmichigan.org. I have Aaron Wagner with a motion, who is second, and Dustin Widges for a second. We'll now approve or vote on the minutes as presented. All in favor signify with a raised hand. All opposed. And the minutes have been approved and adopted. So we'll move on to public comment. I think we have about 6 individuals for public comment today. And for those of you just joining us for the first time, because this is a virtual meeting, members of the public had to sign up in advance to address the commission. Staff at the Department of State will unmute each member of the public for up to 2 minutes on a first come, first served basis. This means members of the public will be called on in the order in which they signed up to address the commission. To those members of the public participating in public comment, please note you will have no more than 2 minutes to address the commission this afternoon. As far as our written public comment, you can also submit always your thoughts to the commission and the public by emailing redistricting@michigan.gov. The Department of State will provide your written thoughts to the commission, and by indicating in that email that you would like to submit your written comment as public comment, it will be included in the online meeting archive for the commission. Public comment sign-up links are also posted on Redistricting Michigan social media pages on Facebook and Twitter at Redistricting Michigan. Now I would like to recognize Sally Marsh, Michigan Department of State Director of Special Projects, who will call on members of the public to address the commission.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. So as indicated, individuals who have signed up to provide live public commentary will now be allowed to do so. For those of you participating in live public commentary for the first time, after I call your name, your screen will change and you will rejoin the meeting as a presenter. Then you will need to make sure your sound and video is turned on before you make live public comments. And if you have any technical difficulties, we will move on to the next person after a few seconds and then come back to you to see if you can resolve those. And as always, if your audio still does not work, you can email redistricting@michigan.gov. We can help you troubleshoot, and you can also provide your comments in writing for this meeting. So first in line to provide public comment is Chad Bailey. Please allow us a moment for our staff to unmute you.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Can you all hear me? Hi, I'm contacting you from Ann Arbor. I've written an email about this, so I just wanted to present it also this way. I would like to propose an approach to ensuring compliance with the Civil Rights Act that approaches the problem in a different way than what the team has proposed in previous presentations, such as ensuring voting districts specifically for protected minorities. My proposed approach would use the so-called efficiency gap to ensure that no protected racial or ethnic group has a disproportionate fraction of its votes wasted. By wasted, I mean the sum of 2 types of votes. First, votes for a winning candidate, but beyond the number required to win the election, and second, votes for a losing candidate. Typical approaches to gerrymandering of packing and cracking often maximize the number of wasted votes for a particular type of group, such as a political party. In my approach, the efficiency gap for each protected racial and ethnic group would be used by the commission to ensure that no group bears a disproportionate share of wasted votes. My motivation for this is the long history of public policy enshrining racial segregation of metro areas in an unconstitutional and illegal way. Throughout Michigan, federal, state, and local governments deployed numerous policies to enforce and further racial segregation, including FHA requirements for racial covenants in deeds of new houses, including in my own hometown of Ann Arbor, choosing highway alignments that displaced and dispersed residents of areas like Detroit's Black Bottom and Paradise Valley, and affording nonprofit status to organizations that exclusively serve segregated areas. My concern about creating minority districts in redistricting is that such districts do nothing to address that history of injustice. Politicians elected from segregated districts have little incentive to desegregate, whether urban, suburban, or rural. If voters in districts are homogenous and segregated, those politicians are likely to support homogenous and segregated lifestyles. Substantial research shows that when a politician relies on a broader and more diverse electorate to gain or stay in power, they tend to forward policies that benefit the general public instead of particular groups. I refer in particular to research by Elizabeth Gerber of University of Michigan and Bruce Bueno de Mesquita and Alistair Smith.
Your 2 minutes has ended. Please conclude your statement. Thank you for addressing the commission today. Next in line for public comment is Audrey A. Anderson. Please allow a moment for our staff to unmute you.
Hello, everyone, and to the commission. I appreciate the time and sacrifice you're putting into doing this work. I also appreciate this time to address you. And so thank you for what you're doing. First, it is very important that there is a high level of trust and confidence in this process that is new to us as people, as citizens of the state of Michigan. And so therefore, my comment is that you really consider providing us with assurance by way of allowing us to attend some of the meetings or opening the doors, if you will, to some of the meetings that you all have, that you really consider a very good communication plan to address the public, and that it is user-friendly to those who do not have access to technology. Also, would you please consider supporting a campaign that will reach all residents, particularly being an African American woman, excuse me, I'm a little bit nervous here, that you reach people of color. I'm very concerned about those pockets in our community that will not have access to this process that's going on.
Your 2 minutes has concluded. Please conclude your statement.
And lastly, for your public hearings, you have sites that are listed. However, it is not clear to me. I live in the Ann Arbor, Ypsilanti area. If I would go to the Detroit site, or where would I go to participate in the public hearing? Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. That concludes our public comment for this meeting.
Thank you so much, Sally. And moving further along the agenda, can we have the executive director's report? Sue.
You certainly may. Good afternoon, commissioners. I'm happy to see everybody today. I want to update you on the contract with Election Data Services. As you know, it's been a little over a month since you approved contracting with them. We've had 3 or 4 meetings with them. In fact, we were meeting this morning, which is why I got on the call a little bit later than normal. But I think by tomorrow morning, we may have that contract very close to being finalized. So I just want you to know the delays have been in some part due to the addition of the racially polarized voting analysts. So that appendix was made. And now the current things that are being worked out have to do with IT and security issues with commissioners having software downloaded on their state computers. So we're very close to having that ironed out, and we'll let you know when that is finalized. Secondly, I want to thank Kathleen Simler for taking our minutes for the last 7 months of the commission. She has, quote, retired, unquote, from this position. And then now we have Mustafa taking our minutes, but we thank her for her service over the last month. She did a great job, and we really appreciate her stepping in from the Michigan Department of State and helping in the process. Thirdly, the application deadline for the executive assistant position did close on Monday, and staff is reviewing the resumes and hope to interview candidates next week and have someone on board as quickly as possible to help us out. Also, you may be interested in knowing that the state of Michigan did extend the remote working to July 12th, most recently. And then lastly, our icebreaker for today is describe one of the happiest days of your life. So I'm going to start this morning with Rebecca.
I'm always terrible at these because I'm not a like favorite person or favorite thing kind of person. I'm not good with favorite books or favorite foods. But I will say probably it's the day that I found out I was pregnant with my first set of twins. That was probably one of the happiest days of my life.
Thank you for sharing. In the second set, whoa, double bonus, huh? Oops, you're muted.
I'm sorry. I was going to say the second set, it was more a little bit of, oh Lord, can we go through this again? But it all worked out fine in the end. So
Hey, you love them all. I know. I know. How about you, Janice?
The day that sticks out in my mind is I was about 9 years old and I lived in the city, and my dad took the training wheels off my bike, and I can still feel him alongside of me, pushing me. And I can see when I look behind him back after he let go. Sorry, I'm getting emotional. So this was one of my favorite days that always sticks out in my mind. I can see him standing there after he let go. And that was the day I learned to ride a 2-wheeler.
Awesome. Very nice. Erin, how about you?
Oh, I'm kind of on the same boat Rebecca's in, but I would say when my kids came into my life. So yeah, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Richard, how about you?
I guess I'm going to have to go with 2. One, finding out I'm going to be a dad, and second, when I became a grandpa twice. So.
Okay, special times for sure. Dustin, how about you?
When I didn't die on 996, when I spun out in the middle of winter and came into oncoming traffic, that was pretty bad. But I'm still alive, so I guess that's one of the happiest days of my life. Kind of saw my life flash before my eyes and managed to make it through it.
I bet you did, and we're happy you're with us. Thank you. Doug, how about you?
Yeah, I believe the happiest days of my life was the birth of my 2 daughters, not twins, so there's 3 years apart. I feel that the greatest gift you can give is the gift of life to someone. And I'm very happy about that. And I'm very happy about how both of them have turned out and developed their own lives. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. MC, how about you?
I'm gonna go with today, with the idea that every day is the happiest day of my life.
Every day is a gift, isn't it? Yes, absolutely. Steve, how about you?
I think that would be the day I graduated from law school.
Oh, nice accomplishment. Thanks for sharing. Brittany, how about you?
So I'm similar to Rebecca. I don't have favorites. I'm a birthday person. So each birthday that I have, that is the best day ever for me.
Okay, that's good. Another year, another year. Thank you. Anthony, how about you?
Well, I don't have any kids yet, and I'm not yet married, so that rules out both of those that almost everyone's been saying. My white coat ceremony a couple years ago was a really nice day.
Very nice accomplishment. Thanks for sharing. And Juanita, how about you?
I was thinking about your question, and the only thing I could really come up with that I could say make me happy is that I have control over my life where I could be happy in just about anything that I do. So every day it's pretty good.
You choose that, don't you, every day? That's great.
Every day, yeah.
Edward, how about you?
I have to be with my youngest son was diagnosed with trisomy 18, which is also known, unfortunately, as Edwards syndrome. And it was just happy to see him come out healthy and not having the signs of club feet, club hands, and things like that. So that was definitely the happiest day of my life.
A lot of relief there. Yes, absolutely. Julianne, how about you?
I would have to go with the every day I wake up is the greatest day on earth. And so that would be mine. I agree with MC and make every day happy.
Thanks for sharing. I always tell people my happiest day was the day my son sold his motorcycle. He scared me to death. But I also love my kids and my granddaughter. So their family's really important to me too. But thank you for sharing today, and we'll take it back to you, Brittany. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sue, for that thoughtful icebreaker, as well as the updates that you provided to us. I also want to thank those that gave public comment. I forgot to thank you. So I know if you're still listening, thank you so much for sharing with us. We really appreciate that. Let's move on to the Department of State. Miss Sally Marsh, are you there? Do you have a report for us? Any updates?
Commissioners, no new update this week. We continue to work on that public comment tool, and I'm looking forward to being able to show it to you in the weeks ahead. But again, rest assured it will be ready to go before your public hearings start. So excited about that, and nothing else from me.
Thank you, Sally. I appreciate that. It doesn't look like we have any unfinished business for today. So looking at the agenda, we'll be moving into new business. And the first item under new business is the VRA Legal Counsel interview questions. So this would be the time that we look at the questions that we all received and are available to the public. And we look to see if there are any changes, eliminations, what have you. Rebecca, can I turn it over to you to lead that discussion, who is also the chair of that committee?
Yeah, did everyone have a chance to look over the questions? Are there any things that we want to change, edit, add? Doug, I see you got your hand up.
Yeah, I've got another number of comments. Let's start with number 5. We're asking we're asking the question that to explain your proposed budget, but yet the billing on this is an hourly based billing of so many dollars an hour, and based on whatever work he does for us. So I don't know if the proposed budget portion of that question is relevant. I think the estimated range of hours that you believe will be necessary to do the work is relevant, though. That was one question that I had. The other one, I had a question. I didn't fully understand number 8. Given your past experience, why do you think the relevant population for Section 2 analysis is in Michigan? I don't think I understand the components of a Section 2 analysis. I think it'd be probably more relevant to ask that. And I don't know what population plays in a Section 2 analysis. Okay, so that's another item I had. I thought number 9 was really good. 10, it is critical that the public have a high level of trust and confidence in the firm's ability to provide objective, independent, nonpartisan advice. How can you provide that insurance? I think that was handled personally in the RFP response that we got. Yeah, otherwise we never would have had that level of confidence in him to bring him forward for an interview. So I'm not sure we should even deal with number 10. And I didn't think number 12 was really relevant at this point in time until we find out what the Supreme Court's decision is, because it's really an unknown what they could decide. I don't think it's a binary decision, yes or no or whatever. So I think that's irrelevant at this point in time. So those are my comments on it.
Okay. Any other comments?
I think Anthony has his hand raised.
Oh, I see you, Anthony. Okay. Yep. Go ahead.
Thank you. I was wondering if our general counsel could explain the Bronovich case.
Certainly, that's the oral arguments were just held in March before the U.S. Supreme Court. It was a challenge to Arizona's policies of if you vote in the wrong precinct, your vote is disregarded, and also related to the collection of absentee ballots that you would not, it puts restrictions on who can drop off or deliver absentee ballots. So it would restrict that. I think normally if people are going, they'll collect ballots from, I think one of the examples was an Indian reservation or certain places where people would drop off numerous ballots, their own and others. So that is what is before the court. It's all related to the Voting Rights Act, which also ties back into Doug's question on, Commissioner Clark's question on number 6, the population for a Voting Rights Act analysis. Again, section with the equation being struck out of section 4, really section 2 is what survives nationally and has national implications under the Voting Rights Act. So it was getting his impressions on where his professional opinion thinks that the Supreme Court might go and how that may impact the commission's redistricting work this cycle. Because I think the oral argument was very unique in that people have a lot of opinions on it. Thank you.
Gotcha. Well, in that case, I like all the questions, all 12 of them. In the past, we've also asked our interviewees to disclose whether they've made political contributions in the past. So I was wondering if we would like to do that for this position as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be advisable. Does anyone have any objections to doing that? Okay.
Madam,
go ahead, Julianne.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. So the political donation disclosures was part of the vendor worksheet in your RFP. And an important part of those disclosures is that they are ongoing and should be updated throughout the contract term. So I make that comment in full support of the commission's decision to question that, but I wanted to highlight that was a question and it will continue to be a requirement throughout the life of the contract term. Thank you.
Thank you, Julianne. I think just to go back to what Doug said about question 10, I agree. I think it might be beneficial for the public maybe to hear the commentary and perception on, you know, how he could provide assurance and trust. I think that could be beneficial. But other than that, I think these are a good set of questions. I agree also, Doug, about maybe number 5 though.
About the proposed budget?
I don't really think that is a pressing question, but that's my
Yeah, I mean,
opinion.
I think we can take off that first part and just leave. So take out, please explain your proposed budget, and rather have the question be,
The
what is the
hours.
estimated range of hours you believe will be necessary to do the work? I think that makes sense to do that. Are there any more comments about the questions themselves? Okay, so how do we want to divvy these up, guys? Do you want to just break them? There's 4 of us who are on the committee, the subcommittee. Do we want to break them into 3 each? And then someone else, and I have to pick up the question about political contributions as well. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and
Everybody?
if someone else wants to, I can give my role to someone else if they would really like to ask questions, so it doesn't seem so authoritative. I don't know.
Anyone else want to ask questions? Anyone feel like talking a lot today? I was gonna say, I can tell you want to do it.
I'm feeling pretty chatty today.
You get it, MC. I have no qualms about that. Go for it.
One thought though, I do like the idea of actually trying to streamline what there's a public, there's our own education as well as the public's education when we're asking these questions. And so the idea that I would read what Julianne basically said, right? That we have this ongoing, right? Instead of adding the question, I would just offer that. And then I think Doug is right. I think that the critical trust that we want, like, I think we can read what they said. And I was going to offer that I would read those 2 questions. I would read or the answers that they provided. That's what I was going to offer to do, I suppose, instead of asking those questions. But I'm also happy to just make it easier and just ask the questions and, you know, divvy it up. But so I'll take Brittany's place, or step in for Brittany and just ask whatever y'all want me to ask.
Doug, go ahead, please. You're on mute.
Sorry about that. If somebody wants to take my questions, they're welcome to do that as well. And I would, based on what MC just said, I would not read the responses. I would let Bruce respond to them personally, to get, so that we don't misinterpret anything that he said. I would suggest we do it that way.
Okay. Anyone else want to ask questions? All right, so Doug, are you okay if we just have MC, myself, and Anthony handle the questions, and we'll just do 4 each instead of trying to find someone else to do it?
Yeah, that'd be
That work?
fine.
Okay.
Yeah, that works.
All right. So why don't, to break it up easily, why don't I take questions 1 through 4? And then MC, I'll have you do 5 through 8. And Anthony, I'll have you do 9 through 12. Does that sound good? All right, I think we have a plan. Back to you, Brittany. You're still on mute. Okay, so since Brittany is having some technical difficulties, let me look back at the agenda because I believe we were going to take a break anyway. Yes, we were going to take a break from 1:10 to 1:15. So why don't we take that break right now? And that will give Brittany a moment to fix her technical issues. So everybody take a break and we will see you back at 1:15. Thank you very much.
Testing, testing. I don't know if anyone is still here. Can you hear me?
We can hear
Audio
you.
is good,
Brittany.
Brittany. Thanks.
Yay! Okay, break time. Okay, I was trying to wait until I saw everyone on the screen, but I don't want to delay too much longer. So, Sue, would you like to introduce who we have here for our presentation? Do you mind?
I don't mind at all.
Okay.
We are happy to have Bruce Adelson from Federal Compliance Consulting, LLC here. He will be making a presentation regarding his proposal for the Voting Rights Act Legal Counsel. So take it away, Bruce.
Thank you, Sue, and good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak with you today. So I do have a short PowerPoint presentation that is an overview of redistricting, tells you a little bit about myself. And with that, let's get the screen share and let's get started. Okay, just tell you a little bit about myself. I'm a Michigan licensed attorney. I have been licensed in Michigan since 1984 when I began my law practice or the practice of law in Flint. I've had an active Michigan practice over the years. I have Michigan clients today, and I've had the opportunity to work in voting and election law in Michigan, advising jurisdictions and then also providing a pro bono counsel and advice to prior Michigan secretaries of state and election directors. I have 21 years of redistricting experience. This is my third redistricting cycle, and that covers various responsibilities. I was a senior trial attorney with the U.S. Department of Justice's voting section during the 2001 redistricting cycle. So as part of that, I reviewed dozens of redistricting plans and was significantly involved in the department's oversight of redistricting, and that includes the department's Voting Rights Act objection to the Arizona Legislative Redistricting Plan, where I had an opportunity to work with the Redistricting Commission from the other side of the table, if you will. In the 2011 redistricting cycle, I was the Voting Rights Act expert for the Arizona Redistricting Commission and also the consulting expert in a federal court challenge to our work, which the Supreme Court upheld our work by a 9-0 vote. My private practice focuses on compliance. I work with local and state governments, healthcare providers, all kinds of organizations, and the impetus is compliance. I don't do any partisan or political work. I don't and have never represented any campaigns, candidates, or political parties. My focus, as I said, is compliance. So I have extensive experience of working with various local and state governments across the country, various communities, community organizations, and Native American tribes. I'm a faculty member at the Georgetown University School of Medicine and the University of Pittsburgh School of Law. In fact, I had a class today, a class on Thursday. Next week is the last class of the semester. So this is a good transition from that Zoom presentation to this one. And I wanted to provide some quotes from the Supreme Court and also the 3-judge court decision in the Arizona case to really focus a little bit on what I think are really keys in moving forward with redistricting. So we recommended various districting population moves and priorities to the commission. And the Supreme Court, in recognizing that our advice was correct, also made the point, as you can see at the bottom of the second paragraph, there's nothing in the record to suggest to the contrary. And that's really important in looking at what I think overall about redistricting and what's important, particularly for citizens commissions to look at, is having a very robust, transparent record. And I think that as we all learned back in elementary school in math, we were all told, show our work. That is absolutely true when it comes to redistricting. And it is certainly true, as reinforced several times by the Supreme Court, both in its opinion and in oral argument, that, well, the record backs up what they're claiming, meaning the commission. And that's what you want. That's what you want everyone to see. You want everybody to know what you're doing. And then in the event of a legal challenge, you can just quote to the record, cite to the record to confirm what it is that you actually did. And I've been very fortunate to have the reputation that I do in redistricting and in various states, localities, local government, and citizens organizations. So to emphasize my point, show your work. It's really important with redistricting. There are all kinds of, as you know, decisions that are made, priorities that are looked at, redistricting criteria to comply with, showing why you made decisions and what you did in making your decisions is really absolutely essential. And so that is one of the takeaways from the Harris v. AARC court case. Show your work, create a strong record, and have objective expertise about why you do certain things, why you move this town to this district or this line here. Have that in your record and show your work and explain why. I think that also goes to my emphasis in redistricting with outreach and citizen involvement, and to make sure that everybody is aware of what is happening, but also to provide an accessible process, both for people, for example, with disabilities and people who may be limited English proficient. So for example, in Michigan, you have 3 jurisdictions, I think, that are covered by the Voting Rights Act for languages other than English, meaning that election information must be provided to them in Spanish, for example, in Fenville, and also in Hamtramck, the language under the Voting Rights Act is labeled as Bangladeshi. So that's something I worked with very carefully in Arizona, and with the local cities and counties that I've worked with as well, is making everything very much accessible. And then providing the community, citizens, residents, education about the process. Why do we do this? Why do we redistrict? And what is redistricting really all about? And that goes to really the show your work point, but also it's all in the analysis. The answers to all questions are in the analysis. And I learned a very valuable lesson with justice when we were first examining the Arizona redistricting plan. There was a particular district where I believe, just by looking at the numbers, that it would not have been possible for minority voters in that district to elect what's called their candidates of choice, because the number was just so low. The minority population, as I recall, was probably in the low 30s. Well, in doing the outreach that I did and talking to people in the community, I talked to a particular state legislator who told me, Bruce, the Hispanics in this district have been electing candidates of choice for years. It's historical. Yes, the number of percentage of minority voters is pretty low, lower than in majority minority districts, for example. But do the analysis, do the work, you'll see that we elect candidates of choice. He was right. And I had to justify this to my superiors at justice, who had the same reaction that, Bruce, there's no way that this district can be an ability to elect district, a Voting Rights Act district, because the percentage is so low. But then we showed them the analysis and they agreed. And that's certainly what the federal court and the Supreme Court decided in the last cycle. And every time the legislator and I still cross paths, I did a redistricting webinar earlier this year, which he happened to be on. And we both had a mutual shout out and recalled exactly this situation, what I call now the case of Legislative District 23. So not making assumptions and letting things prove out by analysis is a valuable lesson that I learned. These, as you know, are your statewide redistricting criteria. And I've bolded 3 that I found to be of particular interest. The third one, district shall reflect the diverse population and communities of interest, is very interesting because it is relatively high up the list of priorities compared to other states. And I'm not aware offhand of another state having a criterion about the diverse population of a state. You also have provisions that are similar to what Arizona has regarding political competitiveness in creating a district. Your language is different than theirs. In Michigan, its district shall not provide a disproportionate advantage. In Arizona, the language is that to the extent practicable, competitive districts should be favored if it's possible to do so, and there's no detriment to other redistricting goals. So that is something that I'm very familiar with. It's something we looked at in Arizona and moved forward with to the extent we could to create competitive districts and not run afoul of one person, one vote, for example, or the Voting Rights Act. What are compact and contiguous districts is a question that I often get. Contiguous is a relatively easy concept in that, as you can see, that a district consisting of two or more unconnected areas is not contiguous. Essentially, a contiguous district is all you can reach. You can walk to each point in the district, so to speak, where everything is connected. There's not like a 3-mile strip down the middle of the district that divides it. Everything is connected. And compactness can be measured by various scores and analyses within redistricting, but typically the appearance and function of a district are good ways to see how compact it is. Usually if you Google gerrymander and you Google oddly shaped districts, you'll be able to tell often just by looking at the district that there might be something strange going on here. There might be something that is not compliant with one person, one vote, or maybe even potentially a racial gerrymander where you're using race to gain political advantage. So that's what I look at is the shape of the district to determine whether or not, and the courts do too, whether or not there's something unusual, fishy, or questionable in how the district is created. And typically is a good best practice is using visible geographic features. Mountain ranges, rivers are good markers of where to have a district border. And I know that if from a community of interest standpoint, it can often be true to maintain cities, towns, and school districts, keep them whole wherever that's possible. And that's something that I've certainly worked on with the redistricting that I've done now through 3 cycles, is seeing to the extent that can be done, if that's something that the local jurisdiction favors. There was one example in Arizona where there was a majority Hispanic city that I had recommended splitting up because I thought that might enhance Voting Rights Act compliance, but the residents in the town were really very opposed to that, felt very strongly about it. And in the end, the commission decided not to. So we came up with other ways to address the Voting Rights Act issues, which is something that often happens in redistricting. If Plan A may not work, or Plan A has some complications like here, where there's community opposition, okay, let's look to Plan B. And if necessary, go further than that in order to achieve the goals of the redistricting criteria and have compliant districts. Part of redistricting too involves analyzing election results, looking at whether or not a particular area or district, what the turnout rate is, what voter registration is does the minority community have a history of electing candidates of choice, for example. So that's part of the analysis in creating districts. This is a question I've had a lot recently. I did a webinar presentation about this about a month or so ago. Ideal population. So the idea is that in doing the math simply so I could follow it, if you have a population of 1 million and you have 10 districts, ideal population for each district is 100,000. Now, coming as close to that ideal number for congressional districts is important. There's less leeway with population deviations in congressional districts. You have more opportunity to go away from the ideal a little bit with legislative districts or at the county or school district or city level. But this idea of ideal population has been something that has been a focus of the Supreme Court, has been litigated a lot. And a good rule of thumb, as the court has said, is that deviations in population should generally stay below 10%. So going over 10% is not necessarily, we can't do this, it's illegal, that's a problem. It may be a sign that it is, but as I said earlier, it's all in the analysis, in figuring out, okay, well, why are we doing this? In Arizona, there were some districts with higher deviations from the ideal than others. And as the courts recognized, we did that to address certain Voting Rights Act issues, to strengthen the districts and to ensure that minority voters would continue to be able to elect their candidates of choice. This is a quote from a Supreme Court case: mathematical nicety is not a constitutional requisite when redistricting. So the Constitution doesn't say you must be, the population deviation has to be absolute zero. But as I said, for congressional, it needs to be as close to the ideal as possible, not necessarily for legislative. That substantial equality of population that you see in the middle paragraph is kind of a good shorthand for a goal to reach. And think of that as that 10% population deviation I mentioned in the previous slide that's looked at as a good best practice to achieve. And this is one of the claims in the Arizona litigation, that some of the deviations were done to favor one party or the other. Courts rejected that and said the record doesn't show that. What the record shows is what we actually did, that we created these districts to comply with the Voting Rights Act and to strengthen the ability of minority voters to elect their preferred candidates. At the time, Arizona had not received what was called pre-clearance under the Voting Rights Act on the first attempt in more than 20 years from the Justice Department. The chair of the commission said right from the start that was a priority of hers. It was something that we worked towards, and we achieved that result, that for the first time in more than 20 years, Justice pre-cleared or approved our redistricting plan on the first attempt without any questions, without any additional submissions. Race is a part of the redistricting process. It sometimes surprises people, but has been recognized by the Supreme Court, as you see here, that having an awareness of race when you draw district lines is a part of redistricting. And that by itself is far from illegal. It is what redistricting can be all about. In a challenge to a districting plan claiming that racial discrimination, for example, in here, as you can see in the middle of the page, race must not be the predominant factor motivating the decision. So if, and you'll see in a moment the mistake that Alabama made, but if I make a decision that I want to have the minority population concentrated in 2, 3, or 4 districts with 70 or 80%, just as an arbitrary number, that would likely be struck down as unconstitutional because I'm just using race arbitrarily to create these districts. And that was the mistake that Alabama made. In this Supreme Court decision in 2015, the court found that Alabama had this policy of prioritizing what you could see at the top, mechanical racial targets that weren't based on analysis, that they were just selecting arbitrary numbers for certain districts. And the court said, no, that's unconstitutional. It's a racial gerrymander. And without a strong basis in evidence, as the Supreme Court said in our case, is without analysis showing why you're doing that and the why being confirmed, then you just can't just randomly select 60% here, 80% here, 55% here. The analysis has to back it up. And in Alabama, they didn't do that. So I use this case an awful lot as being very instructive about the improper, unconstitutional use of race in redistricting. And these are two terms that are commonly used in, kind of redistricting jargon: cracking and packing. Cracking, as you can see, has been defined as dividing people among multiple districts so they fall short of a majority in each one. Packing is what you saw in Alabama. The Alabama legislative redistricting packed African Americans into certain districts with arbitrary numbers without any analytical or evidentiary basis. So that's packing, concentrating people in a few districts that they then win by overwhelming margins. And just as I mentioned, one of the things that I do with in presentations and also with my clients is kind of keep abreast of redistricting litigation today. And as you may know, there are several federal cases that either are currently being litigated or have been dealing with redistricting. And this is one in Ohio where the court recently, let's just say, denied the plaintiff's request to order the Census Bureau to produce data now. And the court was very direct in chastising the plaintiffs and saying essentially, I'm not going to order a federal agency to do something that it is in sworn testimony it has told me it cannot do. So I see no prospect of the Census Bureau being ordered by a federal court to produce data now, when they have said quite unequivocally that they cannot, and the data will be released later this year. So that's one of the areas that I look at for my clients, keep them apprised of what's happening in the courts, just so they know where the process is, and they're not surprised about anything they may hear or they may say, or that they may hear or that they may read. That is my PowerPoint for today. Okay, well, I hope that that was helpful. This is the general overview of some aspects of redistricting, some terminology, and a little bit about my background and experience. So thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. We're very happy to have you here, and we appreciate the information. I will speak for myself, but I think I can also speak for the other commissioners. The information that you shared was valuable. So you'll hear from some of the other commissioners that you see here, and they will engage in a discussion with you. Right now, I'm going to hand it over to Commissioner Rebecca Satella.
Hello.
Hi.
Let me find my sheet. I'm like bouncing around looking at 20 different things at once. Okay. Good afternoon. Rebecca Satella is my name. I'm the vice chair of the commission. So I have a few questions for you. I'll ask you the first four, then somebody else is going to ask you the next couple, and then somebody else will ask you the next couple. Okay. So aside from the timing due to delayed census data, what do you believe will be the most significant issues facing the commission?
Well, as you know, redistricting can be a very fraught process in the sense that there's a lot on the table. There's a lot at stake. You're redistricting your state for your next legislative election. So there's a lot involved, meaning the leadership of your state, the candidates people will be voting for. And it is already a very complex process. Yes, it has been made more complex in a sense because the census data are delayed. But frankly, as I have had discussions with mapping consultants and others who are involved in redistricting, the way we look at it is the data will be out by September 30th, perhaps on September 30th. So as long as you are equipped with the necessary expertise, we're good to go. We know the analysis that we need to do. We know I know you have a mapping consultant that they know how to download the data and put it in the formats that they need. So in a way, I view that the delay can be a benefit in the sense that you have more time for community outreach, education. The people always have questions about why do we redistrict? What does deviation mean? what is contiguous. So and being able to answer those questions with a little bit more time, I think that could be a benefit. I know that some of the local jurisdictions in other states that I work with are seeing it that way, that they're planning a more robust outreach than they might have originally, because they know they have plenty of time to take care of it. They also know that what the issues are for each jurisdiction, and that they're well positioned when the data come out to just get going.
Thank you. What challenges do you foresee for individuals serving in the role of VRA counsel during the redistricting cycle?
No, I think that it's like anything. I think it depends on how expert, how informed the council is. This is not something that this isn't something that I learned in law school. It's not something that I learned when I started practicing in Genesee County. This is something that the Department of Justice taught me, and that I've learned now through 3 redistricting cycles. So I think that being aware of the attention on redistricting, that people are very interested in it, and there are all kinds of different players who like to weigh in. And I know certainly in Arizona, whether they were elected officials or other people came up to us. People came up to me all the time. Bruce, you're looking at this district and this line. Is there any way we can move the district from here to here, or from here to here? So that's an issue that comes up regularly. But as I said, I understand the process. This is my 3rd cycle. I've had the honor and benefit of working with the Redistricting Commission in Arizona, both as an enforcement attorney for the United States and also as an expert and as a consulting expert in litigation. So I understand what's involved, what the dynamics are, and then what the stresses can be.
Please describe your plan and the work product that you will provide to the commission.
Well, my plan, which is the same really for all of my clients, is in working with you, if I'm fortunate enough to be retained, about what are your priorities. Let's talk about the big picture and the small picture. I know you have community meetings coming up. What will the focus be? What are your priorities? So the way I look at my role as an attorney is to, in collaboration, of course, with you, and act in accordance with your priorities and your preferences. So, I mean, I think that's, when you talk about work product, the work product is really defined by not only the work that you request, but also the types of analysis that we have to do. If there's some big breaking Supreme Court decision or trial court or appeals court decision dealing with redistricting in your part of the country, then we're going to want to know about that. So my work product is to provide the advice, counsel, and analysis, work closely with you, staff, the mapping consultant, your general counsel, in producing a districting plan that is compliant and satisfies your criteria.
All right, thank you. Please talk about a time when you had to communicate complicated legal terms, whether VRA related or otherwise, to a public or non-public decision maker. How do you approach those conversations or presentations?
Well, if I could do this today, I'd like to bring my students in, because we could talk to them, because that's what I do that every week. With my law school class, I teach medical school, and that's going to be starting up again in the summer. So I do a lot of public speaking. I've taught in elementary and middle school. You talk about explaining difficult concepts. I've had to explain difficult concepts to students from 5 to 15 years old, plus college and graduate students, plus general audiences, whether it's concerning Voting Rights Act in a presentation to the National Association of State Election Directors, or a presentation to, for example, one of my rural counties about the Americans with Disabilities Act. What does effective communications mean? So I think partly too, by having been a reporter and also having been a radio commentator, is part of understanding how to communicate. as well as being a litigator, having done my share of jury trials, and being able to communicate principles, concepts, ideas, legal issues in a way that is generally understandable. And I think that's something that, from what I've been told, people say I do very well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
How do you plan to communicate with the commission staff, and the public?
Well, I think it also, as I had said earlier, that will involve our conversations and communications. Like in Arizona, for example, I used to speak regularly with the commission chair. She had asked to have a scheduled time to discuss whether there were legal issues or questions she had about the law of redistricting. Talking with individual commissioners, whether on the phone at that time or in person. The media, any time that I had been contacted by the media, that was something that I always discussed with the general counsel for the commission, as well as the chair, about how would you prefer that I handle this. So I tend to be very open as far as availability. And I've had clients in Alaska and Hawaii. In Alaska, some of my clients were related to redistricting. So with the time changes, we used to talk at all kinds of unusual hours. And that is something I still do today. You know, the benefit with my firm, since I run the firm and I set the hours and I set my own schedule. So that's inherently flexible. And in working with you, communicating in the ways that are priorities for you and your preferences is something that I've done throughout my legal career and is a hallmark of a priority in working with state, local, and county government in redistricting.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to
Thank
hand it over to MC.
Hi.
Hi.
Good afternoon. My name's MC Rawthorne. Thanks for being here. And I'm feeling like I'm getting a lot of this. I'm going to ask you some questions that you may have answered already. So I'm going to ask you to elaborate on your experience. So in particular, because of your experience, please share the estimated range of hours that you believe will be necessary to do the work.
Well, I think that it's very difficult for me to say, oh, I think it will take X number of hours, because I don't really know yet what the data will show. I haven't talked to your mapping consultant. And of course, we haven't talked. So being able to say it will take X number of hours would be, frankly, would be misleading if I said, oh yeah, this will take me 20 hours to do, when we don't even know what this exact scope of what I will be doing specifically will be. Sure, we know generally, but I'll tell you that one thing I can tell you, having been a lawyer since 1983, I can do things a lot faster than many of my younger colleagues. And certainly when it comes to redistricting, I don't have to look up what the definition of the standard deviation is, what Larios v. Cox says when it comes to that 10% standard. So I think that that's certainly something that my clients appreciate now, that I could do things pretty quickly, because I don't usually like to do this, but I can't think of another way to say it. I know what I'm doing. This is my third cycle. As I said, you know, I have done, and as I said, I had the benefit of having actually worked with an independent redistricting commission. So I understand where you're going. I understand what the process is going to look like. So I hope that helps.
Yes, it does. And I'm gonna ask another follow. This is a follow-up to that hours and prediction. Given, again, that you've worked with Arizona, and it might be useful to maybe gauge some of the what hours you did there and how that might, yeah. So what I'm asking is, how would you allocate your time among the necessary tasks? Everything you've said, including attendance at MICRC meetings, and if necessary, responding to media inquiries. You touched on all of this again, but how would you allocate your time?
Sure. I mean, let's say, for example, that there's a meeting tomorrow in Kalamazoo, and that you asked me to attend the meeting with you. So let's say the meeting is 2 hours. So there's a 2-hour block of my time to attend the meeting. Let's say you asked me, which I've been asked before, to do either a PowerPoint presentation or some other presentation. Let's say the presentation is 15 minutes. So we have 15 minutes as part of that 2-hour block of time. There will be preparation time for me in my office, just as there was with the PowerPoint I did for you today. Now, let's say that it took an hour for me to put the PowerPoint presentation together for today. So we're talking about, for the meeting in Kalamazoo, 3 hours. My time at the meeting, the PowerPoint presentation. Unlike some of my colleagues, I don't bill for driving to the airport, sitting on a plane, and then driving from Metro to Kalamazoo. I only bill for work time. That's something I learned a long time ago and something I've adhered to. So we're talking, if that's all that we're talking about for our Kalamazoo meeting, we're talking about 3 hours. Media, coincidentally, although it wasn't before my class today, I really isolate myself to prepare for class. And as I was preparing, I got a phone call from a reporter who asked me about civil rights in baseball, because I wrote a book about the integration of baseball in the South. So we talked for about 10 minutes. Having been a reporter, I understand the type of information that reporters want and how to convey it. So I think that that's very useful too, that I understand how they want their information structured. And that's something that I can give them. So we don't have to have a lengthy conversation. Just like I said today, it took about 10 minutes. I think this was a reporter with the Christian Science Monitor. So he got what he wanted in 10 minutes and we were done.
Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
Third question of 4. Please identify how our general counsel and your firm can work together to reduce costs.
Well, I think that one of the things I'm sure we'll do, and something that I do with all my clients, is we don't work in isolation. And I don't, let's say research something for 10 hours and say, hey, I just spent 10 hours researching this. I'm going to take 10 hours writing up a memo, and then I'll send it to you. Because perhaps she's already done that. Or perhaps you all have talked about it, you're just not interested in that. So rather than me just take 20 hours to do something that may have already been done, we would talk about, hey, there's this particular point I think would be helpful. What do you think? And we would talk back and forth. I'm a big believer, particularly in an enterprise as large as this, collaboration is essential. Communication is essential. Frankly, and communication is my business, both as an educator and a public speaker. That's been true for a long time. And I think that is paramount, as well as the collaboration. That's something that I've done in every redistricting I've been involved with.
Thank you. Last question. Given your past experience, what do you think the relevant population for a Section 2 analysis is in Michigan?
Well, Michigan, I believe, according to the American Community Survey, must have been 2 years ago, you have about 10 million people, and that may be what the 2021 census shows. Your population is about 79% white. Your largest minority population is your African-American population, and that's about 14%. Your other minority populations are relatively small. Hispanic, I think, is about 3%. Asian is about 3%. So when you look at Section 2, you typically are going to be looking at the largest population of any one minority group. So looking at the African-American population, that would likely be the starting place. But I would not foreclose looking at, let's say, Hispanic population, because let's say the 3% is all concentrated in 2 counties, let's say, and in a very small geographic area. Is it conceivable that Hispanics could be a majority in a single member district? Potentially. But like I said at the beginning, it's all in the analysis. We start with the African American population because it's overwhelmingly the largest population of color, and start from there. Whether or not other populations need to be looked at from a Section 2 perspective really depends on what the data show and also what the analysis shows. I tend to be very cautious in the sense that, as my son likes to tell me, I don't like to make assumptions. It's like, show it to me. We have to prove it. We have to look at it. We have to analyze it. So I don't tend to make assumptions. But here, given the numeric size of the population, it would start with the African American population.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Sure,
That's my last question.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Bruce. This is Anthony.
Hi.
I'm going to take over from here and finish up the questions. First off, thank you for being with us today, and thank you for your PowerPoint presentation earlier. I'm sure it was not only informative for us, but also for the public watching, so we appreciate that.
Thank you.
I just have a few more questions for you. And you've kind of touched on this a little bit already when you were talking about your past redistricting cycle experience. But given that experience in redistricting, what are common mistakes made by other boards or commissions, and how do you think we can avoid those pitfalls?
Well, if you don't mind, I won't use the word mistake, but let's instead, let me focus on pitfalls I like. There are all kinds of potential pitfalls, and I think if you don't mind me making a kind of a Michigan aside, I know what the roads could be like in the winter. I have pictures of my old cars to prove it. So if you look at the reality of Michigan roads in the winter, yeah, there are going to be a lot of potholes that you encounter along the way. That's why I stress transparency, build a strong record, let the analysis prove out. That's the key to a successful redistricting. Successful to me means that you have a redistricting that's legally compliant, that satisfies your criteria, where people aren't going to come up to you and say, redistricting after you're done. You did redistricting? What does that even mean? So that's how you know you've avoided the potholes, the pitfalls, is this transparency. It's something that I've strongly advocated. It's something that was a priority during the last cycle in Arizona. And just as a contrast, the Redistricting Commission in Arizona in 2001, where we at the Justice Department objected, we asked them several times to prove what they were saying about a couple of districts. They said that these, let's say 2 districts, were Voting Rights Act compliant. And I was the lead attorney, so I did most of the communication with them. I asked their lead attorney, you have to show us the work, prove this. You know, we haven't been able to prove this through our analysis. If you know something, if you can point to something in the record that will help us understand this, please. They couldn't do that. And under this particular provision of the Voting Rights Act, they had the burden of proving that their districts were compliant. They couldn't do it. We tried, boy, did we try to come up with all kinds of ways to look at it. We couldn't do it. So, and that's why part of the reason we did an objection. So if you have that strong record, the objective expertise, show your work, just like Justice Breyer said 5 years ago, that will prove out and confirm that, oh yeah, we did this to comply with the Voting Rights Act. Here's the proof, here's the analysis. That's how you avoid pitfalls.
Thank you.
Sure.
I think that's a wonderful answer. My next question is kind of regarding the transparency you were just speaking about. It's critical to this commission that the public has a high level of trust and confidence in your ability to provide objective, independent, and nonpartisan advice to the MICRC. Can you go into a little bit more detail on how you would provide that assurance?
Sure. As you saw from our proposal, and as I said earlier, we don't do any political work, any campaign work, any work for candidates, zero. And we tend, I think I listed in the section for contributions, my recollection is that going back like to 1985, that I've made 3 contributions to candidates in local or state elections. One was a judicial candidate in Michigan back in the 80s. Another was to my friend Steve Moreno, who is a Republican county commissioner in Colorado. He was running, I think, Weld County. He was running a few years ago, and I know him, so I contributed to his campaign. In Michigan, Secretary Benson, I've known her for several years. I got an email that she was running. I guess it was in 2018. Oh, that she was running. So I contributed to her because I know her. And we talked about voting rights when she was a Wayne State professor. So that's about the extent of our local or state contributions. We don't do that. And as I said, we don't do any professional partisan campaign candidate work at all. I think if I looked at all the jurisdictions that I've represented over the years from a compliance standpoint, they're pretty balanced, and that's just by coincidence. And if they're not, they may even be their commissions, their boards may be more majority Republican than Democrat. I really honestly don't know. So that's what I would say. To me, it's compliance. I let the law show me the way and the facts, and that's it. I don't deviate from that. That's what I did in Arizona 10 years ago. That's what I do with all my clients. We do not do politics. We do the law.
Wonderful. To continue on here, we've spoken a lot about, following the analysis and letting the analysis of the work that we come up with do the talking for us. As you know, the Michigan Constitution requires that as we adopt plans, we're to issue reports explaining the basis on which those decisions are made. From your perspective, what should be included in those reports, and how would that information be used to defend the plans from challenge?
Well, I think in part, if you look at some of the information I provided in our proposal, I provided some graphs that had several districts with different populations. That's an example of something we did in Arizona in the reports that we produced to justify, to explain why we were doing what we were doing. And when we had public meetings and would do the work of forming districts, if we moved precinct A from district 1 to district 2, we'd explain why. And in working with the mapping consultant, we'd show the percentages of people in each district. We'd show a little bit about the electoral history. And that was all up on a big screen for everybody to see. We'd have the paper copies, examples of which I sent you. So I work very closely with the general counsel for the commission, as well as the mapping consultant, to show what you're saying. The information that confirms why we did what we did, shows the analysis, explains, for example, racially polarized voting. It discusses whether it exists in a particular area or not, and then explain why we included the population we did. What's the legal basis for it? So that was something we did regularly. And it's certainly something that I understand what your legal requirements are. It's certainly something I'm well experienced to do again.
Okay. And I have one last final question. No, you've been with us for a little while now. The last question is, depending on its timing, how could the U.S. Supreme Court decision in the Bronovich case impact our redistricting work this cycle?
Well, this is a good kind of question to close, because we'll have my shortest answer. It really shouldn't matter at all, because that's not a redistricting case. It's not a vote dilution case under Section 2. It's a vote denial case alleging discrimination because of, as I recall, Arizona has a law where they don't accept provisional ballots that are voted at the wrong precinct or in a different county, for example. They also have a law that forbids or regulates whom can collect and submit voter registration materials. That's not what, unless I'm missing something, that's not what you all are doing. So it should have nothing to do with that. I understand that, and I tend to be reluctant to predict what courts are going to do. And I'm certainly reluctant to predict what the Supreme Court is going to do. But I'm not aware that this is a vote dilution case or has anything to do with redistricting. So unless the court declares Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act is unconstitutional, which I do not expect them to do, it shouldn't really have any impact on your redistricting.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any other questions for Bruce while we have him from any of the other commissioners? Yes, Doug.
Again, Bruce, it's a pleasure to have you with us today.
Thank you.
Throughout your discussions this morning, you've emphasized the term show your work. So as we proceed down this path, and eventually we'll have to show our work and justify our work, somewhere along the line, we've got to document it. Somewhere we've got to have a repository to keep that data and both the analysis data and the decisions that we made. Do you have any preferred recommendations on how that is accomplished?
Well, I think that that's a good point. I think that the your mapping consultant is like going to be the data czar in a sense. That's the person who's going to be drawing the maps with you, and you may have him store the data on on his computer. I don't know if you have set up where you prefer to have storage with on the commission's computers. You have multiple options for that. So I don't really have a specific recommendation, but I certainly know from my perspective, if I do a Section 2 analysis for you for any proposed district, then I retain a copy in my files, and you will have a copy or multiple copies for distribution. Excuse me. And I would suggest that you meaning the commission, retain multiple copies that you may want to make a copy available to the public. That's up to you, and that's an attorney-client privilege issue, but you're the client, you're the boss. If you want to disclose certain memos, certain documents, that's up to you. And we certainly would discuss that. But so typically what I do in my work is, of course, I retain copies of everything. And then in redistricting, the mapper has copies of the work that the mapper is doing. And then the client, the state, the county, the city, has a repository for all the data and all the analyses.
Thank you, Bruce, for that answer. Any other questions? Doug, did you have something else for him? Okay. Well, if we don't have any other questions for Bruce, it was a pleasure to have you here and to give your presentation once again and to get into some good discussion with the commission. So we thank you, and I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your Thursday.
Oh, well, thank you. I very much appreciate that. You too. And if you don't mind, I think I'm going to take a break from Zoom for the rest of the day.
I don't blame you.
All right. Thank you very much.
Take care.
You too. Bye-bye.
Thank you, commissioners, for that wonderful period of questions and answers, and Doug for continuing to give thoughtful questions. And you're always such a good listener when we have folks. I appreciate that. Not that anyone else is not, but Doug takes some care in listening to what folks say. So looking at if we can press on and no one needs like a 2-minute break. Looking at the agenda, we are now at the commission discussion for resolution 4/1/2021, which, if I am correct, That resolution is to extend the contract for VRA legal counsel. If I'm incorrect, feel free to give me some guidance on that. But I think we are in line to discuss that. Rebecca, do you want to lead the discussion?
Yeah, so we have a resolution that was proposed and presented to us by our team. Is there any discussion with respect to the resolution or to whether or not we want to hire Mr. Adelson and his company, Federal Compliance Consulting? Douglas, I see you have your hand up.
I do. Just a couple of quick comments. I think he did an excellent job today, and I think he really reinforced his experience in the field. And I think that was really significant. He's very good on his feet in conversation and communication, and he comes across to me as a very honest and straightforward person. And I think that's the type of person that we're looking for. So that's my comments on the discussion this morning.
Okay, thank you. Dustin.
I would agree. The second he started speaking, I was like, this is a person that I could possibly trust watching my kids if I had them. So he was straightforward. He seemed honest. He seems like he is a great person for the job, and we should potentially retain his firm for this. That's just my opinion.
Okay, Steve.
Yeah, I would move that we adopt the resolution to retain the firm and extend an offer to him to hire him.
I'll second that.
Okay, I have a motion by Steve to adopt the resolution. I have a second by Dustin. Brittany, I will pass that off to you to handle the voting.
I was going to say, Rebecca, we can't get in trouble. All in favor, signify with a raised hand. All opposed, same sign. All right, the resolution as
I wanted to make sure that I wanted to ask Julianne if there was any reasons that we wanted to amend it. Was there any answers in there that that you thought like, oh, we might want to amend for whatever reason? Was there anything in there that you thought like, oh gosh, we should?
No.
Thank you then.
okay, all opposed, same sign. All right, the resolution as presented has been adopted. Thank you, commissioners, for that vote. Next, under new business, we have the communications and outreach report brought to us by Mr. Edward Woods III. You're on mute, Edward.
Good afternoon, commissioners. How are you? Little
Good.
change in pace with the tone and an inflection of voice. We are excited to talk a little bit about our proposed communications and outreach plan. Want to share with you that Richard Zuba, had a chance to speak with him yesterday, will be bringing the report, the full report of the market research survey next Thursday. You will get a copy over the weekend, but you'll bring the full report. I repeat, the full report. He'll do a survey next week so that you can get the market research survey report. So just wanted to share that with you. Right now, I'm going to go over our proposed communication outreach plan. I am not looking for approval. I'm just looking for you to take a look at it, then get public comment, but wanted you to see it first, and then seek approval for it next week. All right, I will share my screen and go over it with you. Can everybody see it? Nod your head, great. I'm gonna move it so it looks like I'm looking in front of you. Can you still see it? If you can still see it, thumbs up, something. You can't see it?
Wait, no, I can. I was just saying we need to do per Julianne, we need to do a roll call vote for federal compliance for the contract.
Oh,
okay. Do that now before we go
Yeah.
on any further and get it done with.
Thank you, Dustin. I got caught up laughing with Rebecca. So go ahead, Rebecca. I'm sorry.
Not me, Sally.
No. So is there, is there a vote or is there a motion? Well, we don't need to do a motion.
Yes, I would redo
Yeah.
the entire process, Madam Chair.
I know, I was like, ugh. Okay. Is there a motion for the contract as presented for federal compliance? I have a
I
motion.
move we hire the Bruce Adelson firm for our VRA attorney.
Thank you, Steve. I have a motion presented by Steve, seconded by Justin. All in favor of the motion as presented, signify with a raised hand.
Madam Chair.
Roll call.
I'm sorry, a roll call vote by Sally Marsh. Excuse me. Sally.
Hello, commissioners. I will now take the roll call vote. I will start in alphabetical order, but start midway down the list. So first, Cynthia Orton, have you joined us?
I have. I vote yes.
MC Rothhorn,
Yes.
Rebecca Zatella,
Yes.
Janice Villette,
Yes.
Aaron Wagner,
Yes.
Richard Weiss,
Yes.
Dustin Witches,
Yes.
Doug Clark,
Yes.
Juanita Curry,
Yes.
Anthony Eade,
Yes.
Brittany Kellum,
Yes.
Rhonda Lang,
I'm on the fence, but I'm going to say yes.
Steve Lett.
Yes.
That's a unanimous vote.
Thank you, Sally. So we will move forward with the hiring of Bruce Edelson, federal compliance for our VRA legal counsel. So now that we've handled that, thank you, commissioners, for keeping me in line. I love that. We can move back to Mr. Edward Woods for his piece of his report.
Thank you again, commissioners, for this opportunity. Once again, this is just a proposed communications plan for information purposes and looking for a vote next week. This is based upon the strategic plan that was approved. Our mission is to lead Michigan's redistricting process to assure Michigan's congressional, state Senate, and state House district lines are drawn fairly in a citizen-led, transparent process, meeting constitutional mandates. Our visions to chart a positive course for elections based on fair maps for Michigan today and for the future. It reemphasizes our core values: integrity, respect, transparency, and purposeful. Background: in 2018, Michigan voters passed Proposal 2 to amend the Michigan Constitution. Reasons were for prevent gerrymandering, openness and transparency, and reduce partisanship by letting citizens execute the redistricting process. It created the Michigan Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission. 13 randomly selected Michigan residents, 4 Democrats, 5 independents, and 4 Republicans. The MICRC is responsible for redistricting Michigan's U.S. congressional, state, and House districts. Market research methodology. The Glengarriff Group conducted a Michigan statewide survey of voters. The 600 sample live operator telephone survey was conducted on March 27th to the 31st, 2021, and has a margin of error of plus or minus 4.0% with a 95% level of confidence. 50% of the respondents were conducted via landline telephone, and 50% of respondents were conducted via cell phone telephone. This survey was commissioned by the MICRC Commission. Key findings of the survey, just the key highlights that came out. 53% of respondents have heard of the new redistricting change. 53% of the respondents have heard of the redistricting change. Only 24.3% have heard of the MICRC, only 24.3%. The plurality of voters have no opinion as relates to the commission, positive or negative, just no opinion. The two strongest testing facts emphasize that map fairness and public feedback was important to those that were surveyed. Map fairness and public feedback. The three key messages that resonated with the 600 people that took the survey: no unfair advantage, citizen input, and transparency were all key messages that resonate with voters. News stories and websites were the most likely avenues for engagement, and 48.2% believe their participation will have an impact. We want to have our goals. Goal number 1, ensure fairness in the redistricting process. The 3 objectives: share the process for random selection of commissioners, address gerrymandering through the composition of the commission, emphasize that hiring and mapping decisions require support from each representative group on the commission. Goal number 2, heighten awareness in the redistricting process. Recruit Michigan residents to sign up for alerts, reinforce that commissioners are everyday citizens. Number 3, collaborate with statewide organizations and their affiliates/members to inform residents about Michigan's new redistricting process. Goal number 3, model transparency in the redistricting process. Objective 1, create a robust, accessible, and user-friendly website that promotes and documents every action of the commission. Cite how the commission follows the laws, rules, and procedures. Objective 3, establish and maintain solid and ethical relationships with media for accurate, balanced, and timely information release. This was a standard that was developed by the Public Relations Society of America as it relates to objective number 3. And goal number 4, increase engagement in the redistricting process. Objective 1, execute 3 multimedia education campaigns, 1 dealing with the public hearings, 2 with the map submission, and 3 with the adoption of maps, which is also the second public hearing, for residents to participate in the redistricting process through public comments and hearings. Identify engaged stakeholders and communities of interest to maximize the voices of residents. Then objective 3, utilize town hall forums to partner with local organizations and inform residents about the redistricting process. Here's the process was to present to the commission, receive feedback and public comment next week, and then have the commission take a vote as it relates to the plan. When we're looking at platforms and things to get the word out, we're looking at ads, editorials, emails, events, Facebook, fact sheets, frequently asked questions, infographics, Instagram, presentations, press, text alerts, Twitter, videos, website, and YouTube are the platforms that we're looking at with regards to that. If there's any questions, I can take them at this time. But once again, we wanted to present it to the commission before getting public feedback and soliciting comments from the public, as well as our communications and outreach advisory, which any statewide organization is able to participate and engage just by dropping me an email to participate.
Anthony, you have a question, and then MC.
I guess my biggest question is mainly scratch that. Edward, what would you say was the most informative, or I guess was there anything surprising that came about this market research?
Just the highlights. I think Richard, since he did the survey, would be a best person to just go over it and look at it. But the highlights are just what caught my attention in terms of what he shared and what we discussed briefly yesterday. Next week, he's planning to give about a 15-20-minute presentation and then open it up to the commission for questions. But I mean, I think the highlights, I think I was probably happiest that 48.3% plan to be engaged. I mean, to me, that was a a good loading point or starting point with regards to that. I wasn't sure if it was going to be lower. So I think that would probably be something, Anthony, but I don't want to steal Richard's thunder in terms of explaining the survey and the ins and the outs, since he's the one that conducted it.
MC,
Edward,
MC, go
I'm
ahead.
thinking about some of the process that we had, or some of the ways that we will implement it, and I'm thinking about who's like I'm imagining how I will be involved in some of this work as a commissioner. Is it clear that who's going to do this work? But the results of the survey, I suppose, like how are we going to like what you're sharing? If that would be useful for me to know.
Well, I mean, I'm a build out, with regards to key performance indicators. You're going to have questions about, responsibilities. Obviously, the commissioners are doing some of the work with regards to the presentation. I shared with you before, we wanted the data so we could identify where we needed to go. But also we had data when I first started from Tommy Vico's group from the University of Michigan. And the data showed that we had very little awareness amongst elected officials. So one of the first things that we did as a commission was we went out, we collaborated and partnered with the Michigan Municipal League, the Michigan Township Association, and the Michigan Association of Counties to start increasing awareness amongst the local elected officials. And so as we get more information, we'll be continuing with the presentation assignments with regard to the commission. As you know, on the agenda, we have the multimedia education campaigns for the public hearings. That's going to be some additional work. And so as we build out and expand, we'll be talking about responsibilities and roles. But what I wanted to do was, one, make sure the communication plan aligned with the commission strategic plan, and then build it from there so that we could build these things out and you can see the objectives and see the alignment.
Thank you, Edward, for that clarification. Doug?
Yeah, Edward, could you go back to, I believe it's slide 6, goal number 1?
Sure.
Yes. Objective 3. What is meant by each representative group?
Democrats, Republican, and independents or unaffiliated.
See, I disagree with using that term because I look at that, this is one unified group of 13 people. We don't meet separately as Republicans and Democrats and nonpartisans. So I would recommend that get changed.
Well, I guess when it comes to hiring, Doug, the way the hiring process worked is what I'm trying to capture. So if you have some language that could assist me to better capture it, in order for hiring or mapping decisions to be made, you have to have a representative from the Democrats, the independents, and the unaffiliated groups that we call independents, as well as Republicans. So that's what I'm trying to capture. So definitely open to wordsmithing, but that's right there in our Constitution.
Well, I believe what's in the Constitution is that when we vote on the maps, you have to have 2 votes from each representative, Republicans, the Democrats, and the nonpartisans.
Right. So would you prefer if I just said that then instead of each representative group?
Use the verbiage. I'd use the verbiage in the Constitution.
Okay, sure.
Okay. If that's acceptable with everybody. I don't want to delineate us into 3 separate groups because we're not 3 separate groups. We're one group trying to accomplish the same goal. That's all.
I would totally agree. I'm sorry. I would totally agree with Doug here, and that's the matters. Like I see all 13 of us as one cohesive body, not divided by language in said Constitution. But unfortunately, we have to use the language in said Constitution to portray what it is that we're doing.
Thank you for that.
Steve?
Well, I think, I don't disagree with those comments, but I think what we've done, and I think what Edward was getting at, is that when we have had committees to review hiring, we have purposefully said we want a Republican and a Democrat and an independent to review those. So whether or not it was in the constitutional amendment, we have in fact by our own operations done that. So if we're going to change that, I think purposefully, that would be fine.
Thank you, Steve. I appreciate that thought. Doug?
Yeah, as I recall, the reason we took that approach with the one Republican, one Democrat, one nonpartisan was for public perception. It didn't really have to do with the decision making. So I think it was entirely a public perception issue that drove that decision.
MC, go ahead. It looks like you have something to say.
No, I'm gonna let it simmer a little bit.
Okay, that's fair. Any other? Oh, go ahead, Edward. Go ahead.
No. I didn't know if you were the discussion was finished, but I did note that there was consensus on Commissioner Clark's suggestion to mimic what's in the Constitution, and that's what I will do.
Can you read it? Can you
Juanita?
just read it? Yes, Edward. Can you just read it one more time? The Constitution.
That I have that out if you'd like me to do it, Edward.
Go ahead.
It's subsection 12 of the Constitution, and it says a decision on the dismissal or retention of paid staff or consultants requires the vote of at least one commissioner affiliating with each of the major parties and one non-affiliating commissioner. Again, those were the selection pools from the application process, being affiliating with Democratic, affiliating with Republican, or a non-affiliating.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Julianne. Is that sufficient, Juanita?
Yes.
Okay. Steve?
Well, Doug, I agree that that's what we decided to do. Are we now changing that we're going forward? We want to not present that type of transparency to the public and act as one group, unaffiliated with anything, which quite frankly, I think is the proper way to go.
Doug, that's directed at you. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think we should. I mean, we have a limited number of subcommittees anyways. And so I think we should just continue forward with that. But it was the verbiage on that one slide that bothered me, particularly the word groups, because we're not really split up into groups at all, except to do specific work functions. I mean, I think we operate as one total group. I think we operate very well as one total group. So I would suggest we leave all that alone and just change the verbiage on that slide so that the connotation isn't that there's separate groups among us, but the connotation is that we're working together as one group. And there may be some constitutional verbiage that's associated with that, but that's my point.
Thank you, Doug.
And we don't have to affirm this until next week, right? So we could potentially look at this over the week. Okay, cool.
And I'll work on some wordsmithing.
We appreciate you, Edward.
All right. And then knowing what the plan is, we're starting our public hearings, as you know, in the next couple of almost a month from now. And have some good news to share with you is that the city of Dearborn has agreed to provide complimentary rental for the public hearing, but that will unfortunately necessitate a change. And I will share it on my screen. And that actually works out well with some of the other venues, but you see highlighted in yellow. Dearborn is available June 3 at no cost to the commission. And then that would move Flint to June 1 and Pontiac to June 10. And so, Madam Chairperson, I'm looking for approval with regards to these changes.
All right. Can I have a motion to accept the revised public hearing schedule and locations as presented by Edward Woods III?
So moved.
Thank you, Steve. Do I have a second? Juanita, oh, so many. I saw Juanita first. I apologize. Juanita with the second. Okay, can we have a vote if you are voting to approve the revised public hearing schedule and locations? Please signify with a raised hand.
I got a question. Are any other dates going to potentially be changed as far as you know? Because I'm about to put in my pay time off requests with my job for all of these dates that were just shown.
Nope, the dates are fine. It was just the locations. We're sticking with these dates.
Okay. Okay.
And so I just
Perfect.
wanted you to know the locations moved just because we have people working with us to help us with that 10 to 1 time. While we're on the public hearings, we're doing presentations and outreach activities. And so we just want to give them enough advance notice.
Perfect. Thank you.
Aaron, go ahead. I apologize. Is there any discussion before we continue with this vote?
My only question was with the legislation, the legislators extending the remote hearing time to July 31st, I believe it was. Won't that affect the meetings?
That's the remote work schedule for state employees is to July 12th. There was an email that came out last Friday that spoke to that.
Does that clarify?
Did I answer your question, Commissioner Wagner?
It does. Thank you.
Doug?
Yeah, but Edward, don't we use state employees in our meetings? And that would impact them.
Well, that's actually for them coming to work. So I'm not sure how that works with the Secretary of State. I'll defer to Sally Marsh to see if that's going to be a concern.
And then Julianne seemed like she was going to also speak. No, okay, okay. Sally.
Hi, commissioners. Yeah, so as your executive director mentioned earlier, the remote work for those individuals who are currently already working remotely in state government has been extended. Now, important to note, many of my colleagues and state employees across the state are working in person right now, right at the Secretary of State branch offices, among other places throughout our department and across state government. And certainly when there are reasons to be in person, such as helping staff a public hearing, for example, that remote work extension doesn't affect that. So there are folks from our team who will be supporting all of you at the public hearings in person. So no worries about that. But thank you for the question.
Thank you, Sally. Julianne.
Yes, thank you. It would have been, I wanted to make sure MDOS answered.
Said that first.
Appropriate for me to answer for them, but I did want to clarify that the remote work policy for state employees is very separate and distinct from our ability to meet remotely and to conduct remote meetings as a public body. Again, we have that authorization extended through April 30th based on the Ingham County Board of Commissioners action, but we certainly are monitoring the different locations that the commission is going to and whatnot. I just wanted to make that really critical distinction.
Thank you, Julianne. That's appreciated. Any more questions or discussion about the public hearing schedule? Or yes, Steve.
Well, I guess my question is, if we're meeting in a place, Midland, and that county is under a No Public Meetings Act still, are we going to have members of the public there? Are we going to be broadcasting this? How is the technology going to work so that it's out amongst anybody who wants to watch? And are we going to have it set up so that they can call in questions without necessarily having to sign up in advance? And if they have to sign up in advance, how are we going to get that information out?
All of the public hearings will be live streamed, so we'll have the technology. We're working with MDOS with regards to signing up for public comments, and we'll be bringing those recommendations back to the commission with regards to the process for that. And then what was your last question, Commissioner Lick?
Well, I guess I think those answered it.
Okay.
Yeah. As I understand the process, then these are going to be live streamed. There's going to be a process for the public, if they're not there, to ask questions remotely. We're going to be there in the flesh, and we'll have people there in the flesh that want to be there.
Correct. You can call in and ask questions, or you can do it virtually through Zoom.
Okay, thank you.
And so we wanted to make sure we address the digital divide because everyone does not have internet access. And so we wanted to make sure we had a phone provision provided, and that will take place.
We had one question from today from Audrey Anderson about where she was to go. How's that going to be? I mean, I never gave that much thought. I mean, you can go, obviously you can go to any open meeting we have. Are there going to be something suggesting to people that this is the area we expect this meeting to cover?
They're actually, like you said, open to go to any one of the public hearings. So whatever best fits their schedule, they're more likely they can attend, obviously in person or virtually. On Tuesdays, the public hearings are starting at 6 o'clock. And then on Thursdays, we're starting our weekly meeting at 5. And then the public hearing will start after that. So whatever is best for anyone scheduled to attend, either in person or virtually, the choice is up to them.
Juanita. Thank you, Edward.
Also, when Audrey spoke, she said, as she spoke as if she did not know that there will be 2 locations in Detroit. And so is there any kind of way that we can, at the end of our time, our schedule, that we can announce the different settings or something so that they can, if they happen to miss us on one of the virtual meetings, that they can catch it if we constantly announce the timings that we're going to be at different places or whatever, if that's not too much.
Oh, no, not at all. That's actually will lead us after we go to this to our next thing with regards to public hearings and why we're doing the contract, but absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
So it seems that we're ready to vote. I hope we are. So I will restart the motion. Can I have a motion to accept the revised public hearing schedule and locations? Julianne?
Yeah, actually, Madam Chair, you can just restate because the discussion happened appropriately, and so you can just restate the motion maker, the second, and take your vote.
Okay. At first, I thought your note said restart, so, so I was like, no. So we are voting. The motion has been made to vote for revised public hearing schedule and locations as presented and shown to us. All in favor, please signify with a raised hand. All opposed? Okay, it's been carried. We accept the revised public hearings and schedule and locations. Edward, did you have something else for us?
Yes. Our purchasing policy requires us to go out for bids and to alert the commission with regards to doing that. And part of that is dealing with our quote for services as it relates to a multimedia education campaign for our public hearings coming up in May. We want to make sure that we get that done. So it was important to kind of make sure we're tying in with regards to the strategic plan that was approved by the commission with regards to our marketing. I provided quote for services. One is for the Southeast media market so that we can do all of that in one time. And then the second one is for every other area except the Southeast. In the Southeast, we're also including the county that borders Ohio, so we can make sure we get that. And then the other one, we're also addressing the counties that border Indiana. The background, the scope, and the response is right there for you for both of those that we're going out for bid. So if there's any questions, I can take them at this time, but we just need your approval to go out.
Any discussion before? Okay, is there a motion? Can I have Doug?
Yeah, I don't fully understand what we're gonna be voting on. Could you kind of review that, Edward?
Sure. We're voting on the scope is to increase awareness and engagement. The contractor will assist the MICRC in developing and executing a multimedia education campaign to ensure Michigan residents know how to participate in the redistricting process. The selected contractor will use the market research provided by MICRC and other data to make data-driven recommendations on effective communication, key messages, and outreach methods. Ideally, pending budget availability, the campaign will reach residents through television, radio, print media, social media, editorials, promotional materials, short messaging services, other known as text, videos, events, etc. It is expected that the contractor will ensure extensive media coverage at each public hearing. To cut costs, the MICRC will handle placement of print ads and video production. Please note, and this is the one that doesn't include Southeast Michigan, that this should include media markets bordering Indiana as well as Wisconsin. So that's the scope of the work that we're doing. And following the commissions to go out and purchase this, I expect this to follow in more than the $5,000 category. But in order to do it, I need to go out and get 3 bids. And so that's why I'm here for approval.
Are you going to put out different RFPs for different sections of the state, or is it all going to be one RFP?
It's 2 separate, it's not an RFP because it's not over $50,000. I'm going for 3 bids. So it'll be one, and I mean, there's 2 RFPs, they're not one combined. Or I should say 2 quote for services.
If we're not using the RFP process, then how do we protect ourselves on all the terms and conditions like were stated in the other RFPs?
That would be put into the contract based on who gets the service.
Okay, so that 40 pages is going to be put in a contract with those people.
Well, I mean, the terms and the conditions will be, I don't know, it'll be all 40 pages.
Yeah, I know, but I mean, I use that as an example. All right.
Right, but, okay.
Gotcha.
Rhonda.
2 questions. And Doug just asked, and I may not have heard, do these 2 bids cover the entire state? You've got one specifically for Southeast. Does the other one cover the rest of the state, including the UP and rural areas?
Yes.
And is the cost of that something that comes out of the pre-approved budget already?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Rhonda, for that. Any other questions or discussion? Can I have a motion, please? Aaron Wagner with the motion and MC with a second. If you approve the issuance for bid requests for promotional consultants as presented and as Edward has described, please signify with a raised hand. And I know that we have Cynthia here. So Cynthia, if you could signify with that yellow animated hand if you're voting. Great, thank you. And if you do not approve, all those not in favor, please signify with the same sign. All right.
Madam Chairperson, I just want to make sure everybody understands it's 2, one for the Southeast, and then one for non-Southeast. So they were combined into one motion?
I was combining it into one motion. Yep.
That's fine.
Is that clear for you, Julianne, for your purposes?
I think are they presented as two separate resolutions?
I only have one. If there are two, then
The resolution reads services for the Southeast Michigan Media Market and the Michigan Media Market,
Yep.
except for
Mhm.
Southeast Michigan. I think it's comprehensive.
Yep, we're
Okay.
good. Thank you for
Okay.
asking.
Thank you, everybody. So that request for promotional consultants has been approved. If I am looking at the agenda correctly, Edward, are there any other things you need from us?
Nope. I just want to thank the commission for responding and doing all the outreach activities. Greatly appreciated. I know that we're getting requests, and we're also looking to do some more. So please stay tuned. And thank you for everyone for responding during the weeks of the public hearing with regards to your availability. We'll be setting those up as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Edward. Sue, yes, you have a hand raised.
There is one more resolution that applies to Edward's work, and that is to authorize me to execute contracts with
That's
public
what I
hearing
thought.
venues. So I want to make sure that we don't lose that.
Oh, yes.
as
Thank
we
you,
move
Sue.
forward. Yeah.
I was like, maybe they skipped that one, but I have a billion screens up, so I don't. So we do have one more resolution. Go ahead, Edward.
Yeah, these are contracts, so make sure everyone understands there's two separate contracts that'll be done at each facility, possibly. We're trying to get them all in combined, but it would be the contract with regards to the facility, and then obviously because of our extensive technology, it would be an AV contract. So I just want to make sure that everybody understands the contracts that we're doing.
Any questions or concerns about the contracts related to the AV for public hearing venues? Is that how I'm understanding it? Okay.
And that money has already been approved in the budget.
I will move, sorry.
Go ahead.
I will move that we accept approve the authorization for the executive director to execute contracts as described in the resolution 2021.04.04.
Thank you.
I will second that.
Dustin, yep. I did see you, Aaron. I want to acknowledge that I saw you, but Dustin was vocal with his second. So if you are voting to approve the authorization of the executive director to execute contracts with public hearing venues, please signify with a raised hand. Thank you again, Cynthia. All those opposed, same sign. The vote carries. Now we are complete, and thank you, Sue, for noting that with the communications and outreach section. Do we feel like our next thing is the legal counsel report by Julianne Pastula, our general counsel. Do we need a break or? Yes, Rebecca? 5, yes.
I would love a 5-minute break.
Okay.
Yes.
So
Thank you.
that's what my feeling was. So let's just say come back at 3 o'clock then. All right. Welcome back, and welcome back members of the public that have been participating and watching and joining us, all of those things today. Continuing on with our agenda. Oh, we'll wait a couple of more minutes. Everyone's not back. The main characters are not back, so I'll wait a couple of minutes. Okay, hopefully everybody had a good 5-minute do whatever break. Let's move on to our legal counsel report brought to us by our general counsel, Julianne Pastula.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I will share my screen. I have very brief PowerPoints. The first item we'll be covering this afternoon is the proposed remote meetings policy. That draft is dated April 6th of 2021. An overview is that the commission is required to establish these rules and procedures, being a public body. The language in the policy mirrors the Open Meetings Act, specifically and in particular sections 3 and 3A. There are minor adjustments made to accommodate the Michigan Constitution as well as operational processes, and I will highlight those modifications as we go through. The general provisions cover remote attendance of an individual member of the MICRC due to military service, a medical condition, which the OMA defines as an illness, injury, disability, or other health condition, and also a local state of emergency or disaster where that member resides. In order to have remote meetings of the MICRC where all members, as well as the public, would be remotely attending, would be due to either a statewide or local state of emergency or disaster declaration. And that would indicate that there's a risk to personal health or safety of the MICRC and the public if held in person. So again, if there's not a local state of emergency in the area, we could have in-person meetings there. And if there is not, then everyone would attend in person except for the members who qualify under the first bullet point. The requirements for a remote meeting are also set forth in the Act. It requires two-way communication, which is not only between members of the MICRC, but between members of the MICRC and the public during public comment. The Constitution also requires contemporaneous public observation. So that is not required by the Open Meetings Act, but it's a critical component of the Constitution, so I included it. And again, these requirements for remote meetings, the two-way communication and the contemporaneous viewing, I would like to highlight that even in in-person meetings, or if there was not a pandemic, the Constitution requires these as well of the commission. So this is not unique, or it would not be happening any differently if this was a different year where we weren't still suffering under COVID. The notice provisions mirror the 18-hour in advance. And there's also specific information that needs to be contained in the notices that we currently adhere to. The agenda must be posted at least 2 hours prior to the start of the meeting, and that does not preclude amendment of the agenda during the meeting. Members that must identify with their remote location. There is an exception if they're on active military duty. They do not need to provide a location. Again, these are all things that we're doing currently. The additional requirements for remote attendance of an in-person meeting. Again, this would be a public hearing or a regular commission meeting that is going to be conducted in person, and there will be an individual member that will be participating remotely due to either military service, the medical condition, or the local state of emergency. So the notice provisions that are required, there must be a notice of remote attendance of the member on the MICRC website, a contact information being email for that individual member, and the timing of posting. So the reason I put email in parentheses, and I'd like to highlight another constitutional sensitivity here, that subsection 11 requires correspondence in writing outside of open meetings or openly noticed public forums. So that is why it's been, the contact information has been specified to be the member's email address. And the timing of posting is an operational concern to balance the needs of your staff to be able to post notices with, quote, sufficient time for the public to contact the member. So that is the requirement that the member would notify the secretary to the commission via email at least 6 business hours prior, so that notice can be generated and posted in advance of the meeting so the public has meaningful opportunity to contact the member. And that would conclude my brief presentation, and I'm happy to respond to any questions or comments.
Doug?
Yes. Actually, I'm not looking at your slides, but I'm looking at the actual document, Julianne.
Yes.
And specifically looking at section C1C, where it says individual members remotely attending a meeting of the MICRC under subparts such and such of this section shall notify the secretary to the commission via email as soon as possible. The term secretary to the commission is not a term that we've used in any frequency at all. Could you clarify who that individual is?
That individual, this time would be the MDOS staff assigned to the commission. So I would recommend that it would be either Ms. Marsh or Ms. Reinhardt would receive that notice in writing, and it would become part of the public record.
Thank you, Julianne. Dustin?
Wouldn't Secretary of State Benson be the one that would need to get that because she's the secretary without a vote?
Now, certainly if the commissioner wanted to direct the email to Secretary Benson, I would strongly encourage to CC and to include the staff, because the secretary is the secretary to the commission, but for notification and reporting purposes, the staff is who will be facilitating those notifications.
I get that. So I would make sure that we include Secretary Benson, and she is the secretary without vote, and include and carbon copy the staff that we work with on a daily basis. Because I would imagine that she would not be receiving all of the emails and everything and communications that we are sending back and forth between the staff and herself with her office and position that she has.
And Commissioner Witches, yes, I think that, and I very much enjoy your language. Again, we don't like to put individuals' names in policies, but certainly noting that the email for the Secretary of State and CCing MDOS staff, I'd be happy to make that update.
Thank you, Julianne. Thank you, Dustin, as well. Any more discussion or questions? Oh, thank you, Rhonda. I didn't see Sally on my screen. Sally.
Hi, commissioners. I just wanted to sort of provide, even broader context sort of to Commissioner Witch's point, which is, for those of you and Mike Brady on our team reminds us of this from time to time, that, the Secretary of State in state law is designated to do a lot of different things, right? In the Motor Vehicle Code, among other things. And it's very common for, and actually sort of assumed that is going to be designated to individuals, at the direction of the secretary. So I just wanted to provide that information to all of you and to the public that type of terminology is used not just for the Secretary of State, of course, but for other positions within state government in laws and codes and other things.
We appreciate that context, Sally. Any more thoughts or questions? Can I have a motion to approve the remote and hybrid meetings policies and procedures as presented with the edits?
So moved.
Thank you. So moved by Dustin, seconded by, was that Doug?
Steve.
Steve, okay, sorry. I thought it was both of you. All right, if we're in favor of the policies and procedures as presented, please signify with a raised hand. And Cynthia, if you, thank you. All those opposed, same sign. The vote carries for that resolution regarding hybrid meetings, policies, and procedures. The next thing that I see, and Julianne will give us some discussion on this, is the resolution or discussion of the lost or stolen equipment policy, which is very important. So please, Julianne, talk to us about that.
Thank you again, Madam Chair. I have another brief presentation. I would just like to note that when I'm saying brief today, I mean brief.
You're telling the truth. I see it.
Normally I say brief, and I'm not being entirely accurate. So today we have before the commission a proposed lost or stolen equipment policy. This policy draft is dated April 5th. The overview for this particular policy is who it would apply to: any individual associated with the MICRC. That would include commissioners, staff, consultants, and contractors with access to or possession of state equipment would have to implement and maintain appropriate safeguards to protect that equipment. What this is a policy and procedure for reporting damaged, malfunctioned, lost, or stolen state issued equipment. And the why is to establish uniform standard reporting procedures. So those procedures are very straightforward. We have general provisions include encouragement of use of theft prevention devices. Also to be prepared with information that all commissioners and staff and individuals with state issued equipment from the MICRC would note the identifying information of the equipment. The policy outlines serial numbers that should be captured and user ID numbers. And this information should be gathered not only for the equipment currently in your possession, but upon receipt of any new equipment issued. The notification will be for the executive director to provide to members of the commission and staff if there's suspected loss or theft. If there's a suspected fraud or embezzlement, the executive director would notify the general counsel and we would jointly advise on next steps. The actual procedure for lost or stolen equipment is that first the individual would notify the executive director immediately to obtain a report form as well as the instructions for completing that form. The form is a Department of Technology Management and Budget standardized form. So this policy does comport with DTMB procedures. The form should be completed and filed within 24 hours of the suspected loss or theft. And in the cases of theft, that should also be reported to local law enforcement with a report requested. I would also like to highlight for instance of a lost or stolen cell phones, those must also be reported to the DTMB Customer Service Center. And that information is also provided in the policy itself. As to damaged or malfunctioning equipment, the procedure would be to promptly notify the MICRC Executive Director and reach out to the DTMB Customer Service Center. The Customer Service Center will create the ticket and assign a service technician to the individual that will be able to assess the repair or replace status of that device. And I am available to answer any questions or comments on this proposed policy before you.
Any questions, comments, or thoughts for Julianne or for the good of the order?
I was gonna say that all seems pretty straightforward, and I would move to adopt that that policy.
If there are no more questions, I'm going to accept Dustin's move to acceptance and then accept Doug Clark's second. All right. If you approve the lost or stolen equipment policy as presented, please signify with a raised hand. Thank you. If you don't like that policy, same sign. All right, the vote carries. Thank you, commissioners. Thank you, Julianne, as well, for putting that together and presenting that to us.
Thank you for your time.
I would love to hear from our executive director, Sue Hammersmith, so she can talk to us about some administrative business.
Okay. The first item on the agenda, Commissioner Clark had asked if we would consider saying the Pledge of Allegiance prior to our meetings, as some governmental bodies do. We also provide for your information the Michigan Pledge and a land acknowledgement policy. So those are all provided. The commissioners have had a chance to review them, and I think Commissioner Zatella may, I don't know if Brittany, if you want Commissioner Zatella to guide the discussion on that.
Sure. I'm sure there are lots of thoughts, but I would love for Rebecca to guide the discussion.
Yeah, before I guide the discussion on other people, I wanted to make my comments first, just so I don't have to kind of administer and try to make comments at the same time. So I have two sort of overarching views on this. One is my feeling is it's just not necessary. We've been conducting business for 7 months. We've never said the pledge. Over half of the boards, I know some people have reported that when they went to local boards, they were saying the pledge. I would say out of the boards I've gone to, I think I've done 6 to 8 at this point. Half of them did the pledge, half of them didn't. So it was really kind of a mixed bag. We've never received any public requests for the pledge, so I don't think the public is clamoring for us to spend time doing this during our meetings. Doesn't advance the work that we're doing. I don't see how that adds anything to the work of the commission, and it's just going to add time to our schedule that we've already had problems fitting everything we want to fit into meetings into. And then I just also think it's kind of odd because we're not a federal board, we're not a federal agency, we're an independent commission of Michigan, not of the federal government. So why would we be pledging allegiance to the federal government? It just seems a little odd to me. And then my other concern, and this is really the big one, is I feel it's unnecessarily divisive, especially if we're going to be having public meetings where we're starting out with the pledge. We all know from media reports, there are people who are taking a knee for, the Pledge of Allegiance or other patriotic acts with respect to the federal government during sports events and so on and so forth. And I'm just concerned that if we start with that with our meetings, and particularly our public meetings, that we're going to have situations where maybe someone doesn't stand or doesn't say the pledge, and you've got other people who are upset, and it's just creating a divisive atmosphere before our public hearings, which I think is the last thing we want. We want everybody to feel comfortable, and we don't want to have, Bob at the end of the aisle mad at Jim at the other end of the aisle because one is mad that one stood and the other is mad that the other stood. So that's my very short thoughts on it. All right, I will take it away to Doug. Go ahead.
Well, I agree with you in part. I've attended a couple of the city council meetings. I had a different experience. They all did the pledge, but that's just hit and miss on what goes on in the state. I asked this to be on the agenda. And also what was distributed to us was something that I did not ask for, which was the state of Michigan pledge and land acknowledgements. So I would like to, since this was never brought up by any of the commissioners, I'd like to eliminate that as part of the discussion this afternoon and just concentrate on the Pledge of Allegiance to the United States. I think it's our patriotic duty to say it. I mean, we're part of this nation, and I believe that's the right thing to do. It doesn't take that much time, and I share your concerns about the public meetings and people taking the kneeling and that sort of thing, but it's what our society has become at this point in time. So I would like to just put a motion forward that at the beginning of each meeting of the commission that we recite the Pledge of Allegiance to the United States, led by the chair of the meeting. So that's all I have to say at this point.
We have a motion. Do we have a second at this time? Rhonda? Rhonda, is that a second? Okay, so we have a second. Do we have, it looks like we have further discussion, so let's
Yeah.
continue with the discussion. Dustin, go ahead.
I vehemently disagree. We haven't done it. We don't need to do it. I have dual citizenship. I pledge allegiance to both the United States and the Netherlands, 50-50. I will continue to do that. If that is said, and that is the most important thing that we need to be doing in the beginning when things start, I will be turning my camera off and I will not be saying it.
Okay. Rhonda, I'm sorry. Did you also have a comment? You're good, or you have a comment?
I do, sorry.
Okay.
First time using the little hand thing there. Okay. I've got very strong opinions on the Pledge of Allegiance. One, because I served in the military. And so the flag means a great deal to me. And I understand that there's division and some people find the flag as offensive. And I don't think that when you say the Pledge of Allegiance to the United States of America, you're saying a pledge to the government. What you're doing is you're pledging yourself to the fellow Americans as being an American, as being the best American that you can be. And my thoughts on this are very strong. Another reason, I have a very good friend whose 22-year-old son came home from Iraq in a casket with that flag over his casket. And he loved this country. And that's what that flag represents. And I don't understand, and you're probably right, Rebecca, this is what you were talking about, the conversation where it could go both ways, different opinions. But I don't understand how people can take it as offensive. I would think we want to unite. Isn't that all we hear anymore, is how we need to unite as a country? We're all Americans. I think saying the pledge is just basically saying that we're all American. Let's come together. Let's treat each other respectfully. I don't know of any words in it that are racist, that are not opening arms to everybody. I mean, in my opinion, others might see it differently, but I feel very strongly about it and I would really encourage doing it. As far as the other two, I don't feel strongly. Actually, my sentiment is kind of the same as far as Dustin's, as far as the pledge to the state, because I've lived in other states and I'm not going to pledge my allegiance to any one state. I will pledge my allegiance to the country as a whole. So, and the native lands, I know Sue called me and talked to me about it, and I get what she's saying, but I don't think it's necessary. And just so everybody knows, I'm not saying anything against Native Americans. For you, those of you that don't know, my maternal great-grandparents were Native American. So I'm not disrespecting them in any way. I'm just saying I don't find it necessary. So that's my thoughts on it. Thank you for letting me express them.
Okay. Thank you, Rhonda. All right, Brittany, I see you have your hand raised.
Yes, my hand is raised and my heart is beating 1,000 times right now. I would not feel comfortable as the chair of our wonderful group leading something that is that contentious. I actually think, what is brought to mind is the word group. And I remember Doug raised it earlier about us being a group. And I think that pledge dissolves all of that. And I think it gives us as a commission a perception that we are not, I will speak for myself, that I would not be able to handle out and about public hearings. The words and the history of our country, I just think even this discussion and that it's live, that we are in danger of our individual perceptions being misconstrued. And that can happen at any way, but I would hate for anyone to view us as discriminatory or forcing, people don't feel like, I don't feel like that's my American duty to say that. I think that I can be an American and a great African American and a great person without saying those words. And I think the connotation is just too heavy and too risky to make that an obligation, being that we are just like, we just don't owe that. We don't owe that to anyone. And that is my feeling without being disrespectful to those that fight for our country. I think that's an amazing choice to do that. And I think mourning the lives that are lost, and I might be entering into dangerous territory here, but mourning the lives that are lost can be done so without observing a material or a fabric. I think the life is more important than the fabric. So that's my very strong opinion. I would have to echo Dustin. I'm not sure how professional, yes, leading this group, yes, but I don't know how I would handle that if that was a decision of the group.
Okay, MC, I see you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I just, because Dustin said he would, it just puts us in an awkward space. It divides us. And I don't see how it furthers I know the intention behind this is to say, hey, let's unite. And it feels like, right, the conversation we're having leads me to believe that it won't unite us. And I think it's been said already, right? If it hasn't been suggested up to this point, we've successfully as a group bonded and gotten to this point without it. And it feels to me like if it won't add, and if it hasn't been sort of brought to our attention up to this point as missing from our group, not other groups. I mean, that, right, it's important to suggest that we have a unique function. So it just feels like it sounds like it's going to divide us. So I'm not for it.
Janice, go ahead.
When I talked to Sue last night, I told her I didn't care one way or the other. But after listening to everybody talk, I also don't think it's necessary. Like MC said, we've gone this long, we haven't done it. I don't see the reason for it.
All right, anybody else? Go ahead, Juanita.
Juanita,
yep.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, can I be seen sometime? But I concur with most of what everyone has said. I don't think that we should venture off. It's already causing a little problem now. And if we continue that, we're going to have that always in the forefront. Let's just leave things as they were and continue being that 13 commissioners. We know what we stand for. And to make us try to accept anything else is different. So let's just keep the camaraderie going. That's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you. All right, any other comments? Steve, I see you have your hand up.
I call the question.
Okay, Brittany, back to you.
All right. So it was the motion was made by Doug and second by Rhonda, if I am correct in remembering. So it is time thank you, Julianne. And thank you also, Rebecca, for leading that discussion. Thank you for everyone that shared their opinion and thoughts. So it's time for a vote. All those in favor of including the U.S. pledge at the top of our meetings, please signify with a raised hand. All those opposed? I don't know if I got Cynthia's vote. Okay.
I don't think she did vote. She didn't designate one way or another.
Okay, I was just being sure. Thank you, Rebecca. By my count, and please correct me if I'm wrong, the vote does not carry. Okay. The next item for our administrative business is the updated budget. Sue, can you talk to us about that?
Yes, I just wanted to provide an updated budget. I did receive the March 31 numbers today, so I will go back through those and double check, but the bottom line is still the same. The only thing I did was move things from projected expenses into confirmed as monies have been spent. So again, I will go through that with a fine-tooth comb after the meeting today and confirm that I've captured everything. And then I also provided the policy for approval of expenses. Doug and I were talking last week and about the responsibilities chart and that needing to be updated for the chair and the vice chair to approve expenses. So I thought maybe since that was done in January, commissioners may have forgotten what we approved back then. And that's just provided for your information because it was already approved.
Okay.
I'll just note that that was back when we were the ICRC and not the MICRC.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. This pre-Edward, wasn't it?
Thank you, Sue. Thank you, MC. Dustin, I'm not Dustin. I'm on my screen. Dustin and Doug were next to each other. Doug, any?
Yeah, I just want to supplement what Sue said. The reason this came up is the responsibility matrix chart that I had set out, or Sue actually distributed it. When we did this, and the approval for the expenses was done separately from the voting on the chair and the vice chair. And so I did not close that out on that responsibility matrix chart because I thought the two were two separate things. But if we want to keep it as always having the chair and the vice chair be the approval, that's fine with me. I just need to make sure the chart's updated appropriately. I yield back.
Okay, any thoughts about what Doug is saying? Any preferences? Everyone looks indifferent. No one is impassioned one way. Yes, Julianne, thank you.
Yeah, no, I think that what the executive director is highlighting is that there's no changes necessary unless you're wanting to change your approved policy. So again, we don't put names on anything, given the shifting nature, either planned or unplanned, that can occur. So that would be my thought.
Okay, yeah, I just asked because Doug mentioned that little caveat at the end, so I wanted to make sure. So thank you, Sue, for that update. Excuse me if you hear Hendrix talking in the background. This is have a dog. So looking at the agenda again. So thank you, Sue, for your handling the portion of the administrative business. We are now at future meetings and agenda items, which is also Sue. So she hasn't gone anywhere yet. and there are some strongly highlighted changes at the bottom of our agenda in yellow. But I'll let Sue kind of talk to us more about that.
Okay, so as staff builds out the agendas, one of the things that we confirmed this week is when Edward posts for those two media market contractors, that we will need to have that posted for 7 days. And then the contracts could start after that, but it does have to be posted for 7 days. So that puts us in a real time crunch. And we were hoping that we could change next week's meeting instead of from 9 to 2, that would end at noon. And then the following day, we would have those contracts and the commission available for the commission to approve. And if we could just have a short meeting then on Friday, the 16th from noon to 2, that would really help expedite things on our end for those contracts to go into effect. And as it is, that'll be less than a month until we start having public hearings at that point in time. Also, when we get to May, it's going to be exactly like what happened in April, where we said we would cancel that first meeting if we had to go from remote to live, if we had to switch gears that quickly. We don't know what May 6th will bring, or the month of May, but the following week, our public hearings would start. So we would be having meetings on Thursdays if needed at the public hearings. And then we wouldn't have another regular standalone commission meeting until July 8th because of the public hearing. So it seemed like a lot of logistics and work, especially for the MDOS staff who plans these meetings, to go through to have a meeting on May 6th unless we can meet virtually. So those are the recommendations on the upcoming meetings.
Thank you, Sue. So it looks like we'll need to make a decision about these recommended changes. Do I have a motion to, or a discussion first about the dates that are proposed? Juanita.
Yes, can we hear the dates for April again? The next few dates that's coming up in April.
Okay,
Sure.
so next week is April 15th. That's next Thursday. These are at the bottom of your agenda. So they were scheduled from 9 to 2. We're proposing we end at noon and then have a 2-hour meeting the following day on Friday, April 16th from 12 to 2. The other April meetings would be the same. So April 22nd from 1 to 4 and April 29th from 9 to 12. Those are not, we're not proposing a change to those. Those are already scheduled. And then again, if we have to meet in person on May 6th, that we would cancel that meeting due to arranging the logistics for an in-person meeting on a quick turnaround. If we can meet remotely, we will meet remotely on that day.
All right. Thank you, Sue, for that clarification. MC.
Excuse me. On the 16th, I have a presentation from 1 to 2 for the Michigan Nonprofit Association that I'm scheduled to do. And I guess I'm not sure who I'm doing it with, but I wasn't sure if, okay, with Rebecca and with Aaron. Great. So that might, so that's from 1 to 2. So we could be there from 12 to 1, and I think that would still be quorum. I just wanted to make sure that that wasn't an oversight or potential oversight.
I was unaware, so I didn't know about that. I don't know, and we're trying to arrange with MDOS staff too, and allow for enough time to review the proposal so we can make a recommendation.
Sure.
Those will not be due till the end of the day, next Thursday.
And I don't think it's a deal breaker. I think if 3 of us are gone, then we still have quorum.
Yeah.
So the commission can still do its business. I just wanted to make sure that we weren't crucial to anything that was.
Yeah.
Or maybe
last
do it
hour.
after. Maybe do it after, like do the meeting from 2:30 to 4:30, and that way we can go to our thing and be done by 2, and gives us a little time in between in case it runs over, or before. Either way, I don't care.
Yeah, I think before is going to be kind of tight for staff. That's the only thing. I mean, we can work all night, but we do, but we want to make sure we have our ducks in a row before we come to you. I don't know how it looks for other people. I've got a commitment at 2:30 in Lansing, actually.
On the 16th, you do?
I do, yeah.
Wow. Well, this doesn't sound feasible. That's just what it's seeming
If
like.
Aaron
I
and
don't know.
Rebecca are also willing, I think we I mean, it's not like we have to be, I mean, we should be at all the meetings, but I think it's okay if we aren't. And I guess to help as many schedules as possible be accommodated, it feels like I would just offer to accept this amended schedule with that, notice, so to speak.
I would concur too, because you're saying noon to 2, is that right? So we would at least get some time to be able to provide our feedback before we would go to the other meeting.
And we can build out the agenda to make sure that happens in that part of the meeting. I think we'll have one other commissioner though. I think Cynthia is out of town at that point and may not be in an accessible place for the meeting. So is that right? Yeah, I think so. So there may be 4 commissioners missing. Edward.
How about if we do 11 to 1?
On what day?
For that same
On the
Friday.
16th.
Mhm.
I think Sally had said that earlier might be a little better for her. I don't remember. Here she comes.
DOS is we're flexible that day, so whatever works for all of you.
Thank you, Sally.
11 to 1 is good time.
You do? Okay.
So can I have a motion for the recommended change of April 15th, 9 a.m. to 12, adding a meeting on April 16th from 11 to 1, with also the recommendation to cancel May 6th meeting if we're required to meet in person.
So moved.
Thank you, Anthony. Can I have a second? And I saw Rebecca's peace sign as a second. So if you are in favor of this recommendation for our future meetings, please signify with a raised hand. Aaron, did you have a question or were you voting? I'm sorry. Okay. Please signify with a raised hand. All those opposed? And the motion carries for the recommended changes for our future meetings. Sue, did you have
Madam
something
Chair?
else for? Yes.
I apologize. I believe Anthony's frozen on my screen. I don't believe I captured his vote.
Oh, he voted. He's moving. I see him.
Okay.
Yep.
You know,
Yes, you're moving now.
I voted in favor of the changes.
Okay. Yep. Thank you, Julianne. Steve, yes.
I guess this is a question for Julianne. If the state has extended the virtual meetings to July 12th, does that not free us up to meet to July 12th virtually?
Member, the state has not extended it through July 12th, but that only applies to those state workers who are able to work remotely, are encouraged to do so under the state policy. There has been no extension of our ability to meet remotely outside of the Ingham County Board of Commissioners reso, which goes through April 30th. But again, we'll continue monitoring, the declarations and the different locations and keep the commission apprised. But again, the July date does not have the impact on our scheduling of or conducting our public meetings.
Well, we're certainly capable of meeting remotely. We've proven that.
I agree, Steve.
Me too.
Yeah. Juanita agrees too.
I
Okay.
definitely agree.
Yeah. Are there any other things that we should know for that line item, Sue?
I can just give you an update on future agenda items. So next week, Edward mentioned that we'll have the Glenn Gariff presentation on the market research. So they'll do that for us. His communications and outreach plan, you'll get a copy of that as edited ahead of the meeting. So then you can take a look at that in preparation for approving that either as presented or as you choose to edit, but you've edited once. There may also be a marketing contract for a videographer, and that's coming in the future. I'm not sure when exactly. And some additional policies and procedures. Julianne continues to build out several of those. So, and we are working on an updated timeline. But again, right now we're under the constitutional timeline until the petition does go to the Supreme Court, and even then, until something would be approved, we won't really know what our timeline is. So that makes our work a little challenging. But we continue the work that we have at hand, which that is getting ready for public hearings, and we will be helping to prep the commission on public hearings, what will go on, what the script will look like, what the process will look like for those. We also want a discussion on communities of interest before we go to our public hearings. So staff is working on some things that we're going to want your input, and we will make sure that we get these on the agenda yet in April so we can have some hearty discussions in those areas.
I appreciate that. Doug, did you have some thoughts or a question?
Yeah, one thing that Sue just brought up, and this is directed to Julianne, has anything been submitted to the Supreme Court yet?
Thank you for the question. So we have, the draft is prepared, fine tuning the petition based on the legacy data development out of the Ohio and Alabama lawsuits. So we're shooting to have it filed by the end of next week. So hopefully at our next meeting, we'll be able to submit that. I'll be able to submit that update more clearly.
Thank you, Julianne. Anything else for us, Sue? No. Okay. Are there any announcements? Anything that we need to know from anyone for the good of the order, not just any old thing? No
I move we
announcement.
adjourn.
All right. Do I have a Steve? Steve moved that we adjourn. Is there a second? Justin is with a second. All those in favor of adjourning at 3:45 signify. Okay. All those opposed, same sign. Meeting is adjourned. See you all next week. Have a wonderful day.